Hi everyone and welcome back. We looked at the start of our queue class yesterday where we understood that a queue will not be implemented by a singly linked list like we had for our stack, but in fact a doubly linked list, which requires some different nodes. All right, rather than a node that just has a value and a reference to the next node in the sequence, it needs to have a value and a reference to the next node as well as the node before it. All right, and that's because we need to be able to traverse backwards and forwards through our queue. Okay, because we need to know where the front and the back is. We then, of course, needed to have two locations that we recorded on the queue. In the stack, we just needed to know what was the top of the stack. But for the queue, we need to know where the front of the line is, so we know who's next in the queue to be served. And we need to know where the back of the line is, so we know where new elements should go to line up. All right, and then we still have that size variable to tell us how many elements are in our queue at the time. All right, we created our NQ value, which again, if this doesn't make perfect sense, I believe if not by Thursday, by Monday of next week, I will have a video with full diagrams discussing how it is that this queue operates, because it is an essential data structure in computer science. And don't worry, you'll have a full understanding of what this is. Okay, that being said, I'd like to move forward and get more of our functions defined. So we're going to create another public function that will return an integer value, and this function is going to be called dq. And what this will do is it'll take an integer out of our queue, and specifically the integer at the front of the queue, and it will return it for use by whoever is using this queue data structure. All right, so the first thing we need to do, just like in NQ, is we have to check, is this an empty queue? And that could be very simply checked by saying, is the size 0? If it is, what we're going to do, and I'll just pasted this in from my clipboard, we'll print out that there is an underflow error. We'll exit the system, because obviously there's an error. We need to kill our program. And we'll put return -1 there. This will never actually be reached. We just need to have this so that our code can compile to even be run, because an integer returning method must have a return method in a condition if there isn't one at the bottom. All right, a lot of words to say something very simple. All right, now if the size isn't 0, that means that there is a value on our queue that we can take off. So what we need to do is we need to get that value, and here's how we do it. We're going to first say int value is equal to the head value, whatever the value is that the head of the line has. We'll check to see if we only have one element in our queue, then once we remove it, the head has nothing to point to. So we can set the head equal to null, and we can set the tail equal to the head, which will mean that it's null as well, because there's no one on the line. So the front and the back of the line are both null. There's nothing there. Now, if the size is not 1, well, we already know it's not 0, so it must be 2 or more. Then all we have to do is say that we should set the head of our queue to the next person in line. All right, because now that next person in line will be the new first person in line, because we just removed the first person in line. So, that second person now gets pushed up to the front. Then all we have to do, once we get rid of that one element, is we have to decrease the size by 1, because we're taking an element out of our queue. And then we need to return that value to the user so that they can use it however they'd like. All right, we're going to have 2 more methods, and these are pretty simple. So I'm just going to copy and paste them and talk about it. All right, and they're basically the same. All right, the first method is front. all this method does is tell you what the value is of the front element, but it does not change the queue. All right. Now, if the queue is empty, again, we have an underflow error because the user's trying to access data that doesn't exist. So that'll kill the program. But if it's not empty, we just tell them the value of what's at the front of the line, the head of the line. Now, back is exactly the same method. But instead of telling the user what we have at the head of the line, we just tell them what's at the tail, what's at the back of that line, right? Oh, I believe here it's called rear. We can call it rear as well. My mistake. All right. Now, we had this in the stack, but I do want to make sure that we also have two more methods. And if I'm going too fast, feel free to pause wherever you need to get the code. But I also want to add isEmpty and size, which are just methods to tell the user very quickly, is my queue empty? And to tell them very quickly how many elements are in the queue. All right. With these, we actually have everything we need to make this queue method work. All right. Now we can add some more things. Sorry, this queue data structure work. We can add some more things like a print method, which we will, but that can wait until tomorrow. But make sure that you have all of these so that tomorrow we can test our queue. Then we'll also, add one little thing so that we can print out all the elements in the queue very nicely and succinctly. And then Thursday, I hope to have diagrams out for you, fully explaining this if it isn't already there. I don't want to make anyone scared. I'm still considering whether or not I want to do this, but I also want to mention I would love to give you guys a quiz on data structures. Now, if that is something that you are staunchly against, please give me your argument in the Discord in either your period 2 or period 4 channels. I will take your opinions into account. I think if you're doing the work and you understand this, it should do nothing but help your grade. But if you are already overwhelmed, let me know and I'll try to figure out a better way of testing how much you understand this content. But I do want to check in on this because this is not only my favorite unit for you guys, but also probably the most important if you're going forward in computer science. Because in college you'll have an entire course dedicated to data structures, and the most important things that you'll have in your tool belt when you're going into that are linked lists, queues, and stacks. Those are like amazing to have in a data structures and an algorithms class. So you let me know if you think a quiz will be so horrifically bad for you guys that we can never ever do something like that. But otherwise, I'm probably going to do that. Anyway, I've been talking for way too long. Do the attendance if you haven't already. Join the Discord if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one.